Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Social Studies class. Of course, you know this is your teacher, Mr. Clarke. Alright, now today we are going to be doing a second video on regional integration. Right, so I have done a video on regional integration already, but as promised, I will do one or two more videos on regional integration, and this is my second video on regional integration. Right, so we are going to be looking specifically at the factors that promote regional integration in this video. Alright, so before we get into our video though, as usual, you know that we like to thank those persons who have subscribed to the channel, and I have been getting some positive feedback from my viewers. I really thank you. I really appreciate your comments, and I am going to encourage those persons who are new to the channel to go ahead and subscribe right now, and please ensure that you give the video a thumbs up so that it may be broadcasted all over YouTube. Please ensure that you share the video and leave us a comment as usual and let us know what you think about today's lesson. Alright, so as I said before, we are going to be looking at the factors that promote regional integration, right? Now, usually CXC, this is a question that usually comes on the CSEC exam. They usually ask you for, one or two factors that promote regional integration, right? So I want you to pay careful attention so that you will be able to answer this particular question. We are going to be doing another video, probably or more videos on regional integration, hopefully before the CSEC exam comes around. So we want to look at the benefits as well, and we want to look at the factors that hinder regional integration, right? But for now, we are going to be looking at factors that promote regional integration. So when we speak about factors that promote regional integration, what we're really talking about are those factors that really cause Caribbean countries to come together, right? Right, because we must remember that integration, regional integration, is all about coming together. So when we speak about factors that promote regional integration, we are talking about factors that cause the region to come together and work together, right? So that is what we are going to be looking at in today's lesson. Right, now, as with any group or relationship, the factors that usually promote the coming together of persons, right, or countries, are usually things that the persons have in common. When you have something in common with somebody, it is likely to make the relationship work, right? It is likely to make things easier, right? So you are more compatible to each other because you have certain similarities, right? So regional integration is no different, right? So basically what I'm saying here is that the similarities that the countries have are the things that usually cause them to come together, right? However, at this point, I must also point out to you that it is not always the case as it relates to similarities. Sometimes similarities cause Caribbean countries or make the integration process difficult, right? So similarities can make the integration process difficult or be an hindrance to regional integration as well, right? So I'll get to that in another lesson. Alright, so when we talk about the similarities that make regional integration, or that promote regional integration rather, we're talking about domestic factors, we're talking about the limitations that the islands may have, and also there are external factors that cause Caribbean countries to really come together and work together as one unit. Alright, so let us look at some of these similarities. Domestic factors first of all. Some of the domestic factors that cause the Caribbean countries to work together, and sometimes you are asked to, list domestic factors or limitations or external factors, right? So that is why I have listed these factors for you, so that in the event that you are only asked to list 2 or 3 or 4 domestic factors that promote regional integration, you may find that easy to do, right? So some of the domestic factors are common language, common history, small population, common social issues. Caribbean countries are all vulnerable to natural disasters, and 6 and last, Caribbean countries are in close proximity to each other. Alright, so we are going to be breaking down these factors for easier understanding, right? So when we speak about common language, what we're saying is, as you are well aware, most countries in the Caribbean speak English, right? Most of the Caribbean countries are English-speaking countries, right? All CARICOM members except Haiti and Suriname are English-speaking countries, right? So when the countries speak the same language, it makes it easier for communication, and it makes the entire process of integration much smoother, right? Because everybody understands each other easier, right? So speaking the same language will really make integration a much smoother process. The next factor that promotes regional integration is that Caribbean countries all have a common history, right? So when we speak about common history now, we're talking about the fact that Caribbean countries were once colonized, right? So we're coming from the days where we had British colonies, we had Spanish colonies, we had French colonies, and we had Dutch colonies, because we're coming from a history, a background of colonization, right? So basically we can identify with each other as it relates to our historical background, right? Because if we were all colonies, then basically our development pattern would be similar, and that is really a reason for us to work together, right? Because the development strategies and patterns would be similar, and that would make us work together easier, right? So there's the saying that birds of a feather flock together, right? So you have things in common. You have a similar history in terms of being colonized, so that is one factor. And another factor in terms of our history is that we are all dependent on farming and tourism as the main contributors to economic growth, right? So because of our history, because we're coming from the days of the plantation system, where we depended mostly on sugarcane, right? And after the days of slavery, we actually went into farming. We continued into farming, right? So farming is one of the mainstay of the Caribbean society. Likewise, because of our tropical climate, tourism is also one of our main income earners, right? So being from the same area where we depend on farming and tourism, that again is a factor that promotes regional integration, right? Another factor in terms of our history is that we are all multiracial populations, right? Coming from, again, the days of slavery and indentureship, we are all multiracial populations in the sense that different ethnic groups came to different Caribbean countries, right, at some point in time. So our racial blend, for example, may consist of Africans, Europeans, Indians, Chinese, and so on, Lebanese as well, and so on, right? So we are from a very multiracial background, and that makes it easier for Caribbean countries to really work together, right? So multiracial population is another factor that promotes regional integration, or makes it easier then, right? Because all of us basically have the same composition of racial background, right? So that makes it easier for us to work together. All right, when we speak about our small size, right? Caribbean countries are very small countries. You have a lot of small islands in the Caribbean, and the populations are very small, right? This is an example of how small our populations are. Jamaica, approximately 3 million people, Trinidad, approximately 1.4 million people. Barbados, 300,000 people. Grenada, 112,000 people. Right, so these are very small populations in comparison to other countries, for example, in North America and Europe. Right, so in USA, for example, USA has a population of approximately 328 million people. The United Kingdom, 68 million people. Canada, 38 million people. Right, so all of these countries individually are even bigger than the Caribbean as a whole. Right, so basically what we're saying here is that because of our small size, in order to match up to these countries in terms of competition, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to really pool our human resources together and make ourselves bigger, right, so that we can compete in a much more effective way, right? So we are very small in terms of numbers, so we basically have to integrate, right? So the small populations, again, is another factor that promotes regional integration. Another factor that promotes regional integration is the fact that we have common social issues, right? So we suffer from the same crime problems, we suffer from teenage pregnancy, poverty, child abuse. All of these are similar, right? And we're not saying that these problems are exclusive to the Caribbean. What we're saying, however, is that they are of the same nature, or the types of crimes are basically similar among Caribbean countries, right? Teenage pregnancy may be developed from similar issues within the Caribbean, right? In other societies, you might find that there are different causes for teenage pregnancy, right? I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but probably the reasons behind teenage pregnancy, they are different in other societies, right? But in most Caribbean countries, the social issues that develop in our Caribbean islands are basically derived from the same issues, right? So that makes it easier for us to really work together in terms of, making up strategies to deal with these social issues, right? So because the social issues are similar, then we can identify with each other and we are better able to come up with solutions if we come together as a group and work together, right? So common social issues is another factor that promotes regional integration. All right, so moving on to the next point, Caribbean countries are all vulnerable to natural disasters because of our location and climate. All right, so we are located between North and South America, right? So we are located in the tropics, right? So our climate is basically what we refer to as tropical marine climate. And we are located with the islands in the Caribbean are surrounded by the Caribbean Sea. Because of this now, we are all vulnerable to natural disasters, right? So most storms and hurricanes, they develop in the sea. So, and our climate basically makes us vulnerable to natural disasters. So that is another reason for us to work together as a group, right? Because we will be affected by the same natural disasters. So we may offer intra-regional assistance to each other when we are hit by natural disasters, right? So that is why we have this listed as a factor that promotes regional integration, right? The closeness of the islands makes trading and travel easy. So Caribbean countries are in close proximity to each other. Because of this now, it is easier for us to trade goods and services because we're not far away. So traveling is cheaper, right? Traveling is less expensive than to travel to America and to countries in Europe, right? So it makes it easier for us to work together as a group. Now, as it relates to the limitations, right? We have limited physical resources, we have limited human resources, right? So limited physical resources, we're talking about gifts of nature, those things that appear naturally in our environment. So Jamaica, for example, you know that our main resource in Jamaica is bauxite. In Guyana, you might find rice. In Grenada you might find the spices, in Trinidad you might find oil, and so on. But there is no one Caribbean country with all of these resources, right? So every Caribbean country, while each Caribbean country may have a dominant natural resource, there is no one Caribbean country with all of these resources. So as a result of that, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to work together as a group so that we can really trade between each other or among each other to supply each other with the things that we lack, right? So we can send bauxite to Trinidad while Trinidad send oil to Jamaica, right? So that sort of thing. So we lack physical resources, right? So we have to pool our resources together to make things easier on each country, right? We also lack human resources, right? Because of our small populations, we do not have enough persons, we do not have enough people to really develop, right? So we are unable to develop all the necessary human resources that we will need for effective development within the region, right? So the best thing that we can do is to share or to pool our resources together so that we can limit the need for foreign experts coming from outside the region, right? So that is why these limitations are basically factors that promote regional integration. Alright, so as it relates to the external factors now that promote regional integration, the external factors are globalization, trade liberalization, and competition with other trading blocs. So let us look at these individually. Globalization is the spread of products, technology, information, and jobs across national borders. Alright, so what we're saying here is that globalization has basically caused people to stay in the comfort of their home and order or purchase things from other countries, right? So products or borders have been opened basically, right? So you can now stay right here in Jamaica, for example, and order something from Canada. You can stay in any Caribbean country and buy something from America or from Britain, right? Or from even China. You can do so because you can easily go online and purchase anything that you want. So basically what this does is that it basically increases the competition for local producers. So local producers now, they are not only competing against persons within their own country, they are competing against persons from outside of the Caribbean, right? So because of this now, local producers are now being forced to develop the quality and standard of their products that they produce. And the best way to do so is to really join forces together. Join with your Caribbean neighbors so that you can get ideas or even pool resources, human resources, physical resources together so that you can compete with the bigger countries outside of the region, right? So that is basically how globalization has promoted regional integration, right? Now, trade liberalization is another factor that has promoted regional integration. What do we mean by trade liberalization? Trade liberalization is the removal or reduction of restrictions or barriers on the free exchange of goods between nations. Alright, so basically what we're saying here is that trade has been liberalized, meaning the barriers to trade among countries right across the world, they have been reduced significantly, right? So most countries now, there are limited restrictions. There are not a lot of restrictions when it comes to trading with each other, right? So because of this now, persons from within the region can trade with countries from outside of the region, right? So in order to really reduce the effects of this, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to come together as a group, right? So when you speak about trade liberalization, Just think about, for example, Jamaica going to America to purchase something, right? And you stand in a line among countries from all across the world. So you're standing with your local currency, and somebody come from England with their UK pound, right? Their British dollars. So America is going to give the preference to the person with the currency that values more, right? So basically what we can do for ourselves is to come together and make ourselves bigger so that we can compete against these much bigger nations, right? So basically that is how trade liberalization promotes regional integration. Trading blocks. Now, trading blocks are usually groups of countries in specific regions that manage and promote trade activities, right? So basically what I'm saying here is that in different, it's like regional integration in different regions, right? So countries within Europe, they come together and they form a trading bloc. Countries within the Americas, they come together and they form a trading bloc, right? So NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, is an example of a trading bloc which covers Canada, the United States of America, and Mexico, right? So the EU again is an example. The European Union is an example of a trading bloc. The EU combined is amongst the world's biggest exporters, right? So when they form trading blocs, they basically trade within their region. So they try to exclude countries from outside of their region from trading with them, right? So these countries they were already big by themselves as individual countries, right? So they have made themselves bigger, right, as a trading bloc. So the only thing we are left to do is to basically make ourselves bigger as a region also, right? So, and when we make ourselves bigger in the Caribbean, we are still not as large as these European region or the North American region, right? So we still have to try something, and the best thing that we can try is to basically come together as a region and work together, right? So trading blocks is an external factor that promotes regional integration. That is where we're going to stop for today. I really hope that you would have learned something from today's class, and I will see you in the next class.